Running your own private server, but your websites still feel outdated? In this video, we'll upgrade them into a cleaner, more modern web architecture. I'll show you how to build your website in two different ways: by reusing a design theme you already like, or by creating one from scratch. And if you don't have coding experience, don't worry, I'll walk you through it. We'll use an AI agent to help build the site, and then I'll show you how to deploy it. Let's make it happen. So the process looks like this. We start with a design direction. You can either pick a style you like and use it as a visual reference, or you can buy an existing theme and use that as a faster starting point. Then, we give that to an AI agent and let it help us build the app. But here's the important part. We don't just tell the AI to make a website, we also give it our server pack, so it understands how our database tables are structured. Hence, it can construct the appropriate DB select queries later on. After that, the app gets split into two main parts: the backend, where we create the APIs and business logic, and the front end, where we build the actual user interface. Finally, once the app is ready, we deploy and keep an eye on it in production. Everything I'm showing you in this video can be done for free, so you can follow along without spending anything. No matter if you choose option A or option B for the design, I recommend starting with some inspiration first. What I usually do is browse online and look for high-quality website designs. On this website, I like to filter by the most expensive themes, because those usually have the best design quality. Then I simply look around and see if there's anything I like. From there, I can either buy the theme and use it as a starting point, or use it as a visual reference and create my own version from scratch. In this case, I really liked the clean, minimalist design of this Warland theme, so I'm going to copy the link to this page. Later, we'll give this link to the AI so it can use the design as a reference when we create our own version. Now, for the AI agent, we'll be using Cursor. For this project, the free plan is enough, so you don't need to pay for anything. Just create an account, download Cursor, install it, and then open the app. Before we start, create a new folder for your project. Then open Cursor, click Open Project, and select the folder you just created. On the right side of the screen, you'll see the Agent Chat window. This is where we'll paste our first prompt. You can copy the full prompt from the GitHub page linked in the video description. This prompt contains the main instructions for our AI agent. First, we give it the link to our server pack, so it understands the structure and rules of our existing setup. Then we tell it which parts of the database are important, like character stats, castles, clans, heroes, and everything else we need for the website. We also define the technology stack for both the front end and back end and specify which database version we are using. Finally, we describe how we want the website to look, what features it should have, and what the final result should feel like. Before building anything, we ask the AI to plan the project, explain the structure, and only then start creating the actual application. The AI is now done processing our prompt. At this point, you can read through the documentation it generated and get familiar with the project structure. If you scroll all the way down, you'll also see the commands for running both services locally. But before we do that, we need to update the .env file. This file contains sensitive information, like your database host, username, password, and anything else you don't want to accidentally push to a Git repository later. So open the .env file and, for now, replace the placeholder values with your local database connection credentials. Now, open the terminal and run the following commands. First, run cd backend to move into the backend folder. Then run npm install to install all the dependencies used by the backend project. Once that's finished, start the service with npm run dev. In my case, I got an error because port 3001 was already being used by another process. So I changed the backend port to 4001 and started it again. Now keep the backend terminal running and open a new terminal window. We're going to repeat a similar process for the front-end project. First, move into the front-end folder. Before running npm install, we also need to copy the example environment file and turn it into a real .env file that we can edit. Then, open that .env file and check the backend API URL. If you change the backend port earlier, like I did from 3001 to 4001, make sure the front end is pointing to the same port. After that, run npm install to install the front-end dependencies, and then start the front-end service. Now open your browser and paste the local URL from the terminal. This is what the AI has generated so far. As you can see, it followed the theme colors we gave it, and it even tried to reuse the theme name, but we'll change that in the next prompt. The design is a good starting point, but it's still not quite where we want it to be. So in the next step, we'll give the AI more specific feedback and improve the overall look. We correct things like the website name, the motto, the navigation, and how we want the top section to look. We also explain which stats we want to display on the page, and to keep the AI on track, we pass the reference link again, so it doesn't start hallucinating or drifting too far away from the design direction. Alright, now that the AI has finished updating the project, let's restart the services, open the browser again, and see what changed. Right away, you can see this is a big improvement compared to the first version. The design is cleaner, more minimalist, and definitely more modern, but it still needs a bit of polishing. I also want to add a few more pages later. One for the current Olympiad heroes, and another one for the server rates, with a short promo section. But before we continue with the design, let's quickly test our backend integration and see how it pulls the number of players currently online and so on. Now let's test the online counter. I'll start the login server and the game server, then log into the game with a character and see if the website updates correctly. Here I'm logged in with an admin character, and as you can see, the website doesn't count it as an online player. This probably means the AI wrote the SQL select to exclude GM characters from the counter. So let's test it again with a normal character and see if that works. Nice, so now the counter is working fine. And if you ever want GM characters to be included in the result, just tell the AI to update the player online counter. Now let's test the other stats counters and see if they work correctly too. For this test, I used two bots to check if the player kill stats are working. The good news is that the characters are displayed correctly on the leaderboard, but the actual kill numbers are still missing. One possible reason is that the server only writes those stats to the database after the character logs out or after a server restart. But instead of debugging that manually, we'll just give this issue to the AI and let it figure it out. I'll also use the same prompt to ask it to replace the logo image and add the missing pages. After a little back and forth, the AI has now finished all the changes we requested. And this is the real power of using an AI agent. You give it one task at a time, review the result, and then keep improving the project with each iteration. That's how you slowly move from a basic first version to the design and features you actually want. The sky is the limit here. If you want to change something, you just ask for it. You're not locked into anything. You decide what goes on your website, what pages it has, and how everything should look and work. At this point, I'm happy with the result. The website is clean, it has all the features I wanted, and it also works well on mobile. You can always keep pushing it further and polish every small detail, but for this episode, this is enough. Next, we'll focus on deploying the website to the cloud and testing it live. Next, I'll show you how to deploy the project on Render. Render is a modern cloud hosting platform where you can host different types of applications. And the good thing is, it has a free plan so you can follow along without paying anything. You can create a Render account manually, but an easier option is to sign in with your repository provider, like GitHub. Since we'll need to connect the project repository later anyway, this makes the setup a bit faster. Once I logged in through GitHub, I opened freedb.tech. For this demo, I don't have an actual game server running in the cloud, so I'll use a temporary free MySQL database instead. I'm going to import a snapshot of my local database into it, so we can simulate a real online server database. That way, when we deploy the project, I can show you exactly where to add the database credentials and how the app connects to it. Before importing anything, I'll first connect to the remote database and make sure I can access it without any issues. Great, the remote database connection is working. Now we'll switch back to the local database, export the full database snapshot, and then import it into the remote database. Alright, now that everything is ready, let's go back to Render and start the deployment. On the GitHub page I made for this tutorial, you'll find two ways to deploy the project on Render. For this video, I recommend option A because it's the simplest one. We just click New, choose Blueprint, and link the GitHub repository where our website code is stored. Give the blueprint a name. I like to use the same name as my GitHub repository, just to keep things organized. Now, at the bottom of the page, we have a few environment variables that need to be filled in. Remember the two .env files we used earlier during development, one for the backend and one for the frontend. This is basically the same thing, but now we're adding those values directly inside Render. The top section is for the backend environment variables. and the two values at the bottom are for the front end. So let's copy the values in and make sure everything matches our remote database and deployment setup. For course_origin, we need to use the front-end service name from the render.yaml file. This tells the backend only to accept requests coming from this domain. Then, for vite_api_url, we do the opposite. We copy the backend service name from render.yaml file because this tells the frontend where the API is hosted. When everything looks good, click Deploy Blueprint. This will kick off the deployment process and Render will start building both services. Now give it a few minutes and wait until both the backend and frontend are deployed successfully. Now go back to the Render dashboard, and you should see both services running. If you open the backend service and go to Logs, you can check what's happening inside the container and make sure everything started correctly. For the frontend, Render will show you the live URL, and that's the link you can open in your browser to visit the website. And that's it. Everything works fine. Now you know how to build your own website with the help of AI, customize it, experiment with it, and keep pushing it until it looks exactly the way you want. You also saw how easy it is to deploy the project on Render and monitor it after it goes live. If you end up liking Render, you can even upgrade your plan later and connect your own custom domain. So your website has a cleaner, more professional URL. I hope you enjoyed this episode. My goal was to show you the real process of building everything from scratch, not just the perfect final result, but also the debugging, the small issues, and the fixes that happen along the way. If you want to learn more about the architecture and the tech stack behind this project, check out the GitHub page linked in the description. And as always, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.